Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
Liturgically, we know that the Psalm 145, which begins with the Tehillah David Aromimcha, right? That is the third line, Tehillah David. Okay, that's the beginning of Psalm 145. So you have two verses that precede and one verse at the end. All right. Hold on one second. Hallelujah is also not from the Psalm. You have the first line that precedes the Psalm is Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yihalalu Chasela. Right?
You're talking about in the Siddur.
That's in the Siddur.
In the Siddur, not.
That is Psalm 85, verse 5. You don't have to check me on it. Trust me. 85. I did check it, by the way, and I have a comment to observe about that. All right, that's the first one. The second one is Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Elohav. Okay, so that's Psalm 144, verse 15. 144, verse 15. And then the one at the end, Ba'anachnu nevarechem etav olam hallelujah, is Psalm 115, verse 18. Now, the common denominator of all those three Psalms is that they are from Psalms that are very nationalistic, that talk strictly about God's relationship with Am Yisrael, or the temple and Zion. They're very, very narrow in their scope. As you will see, if you haven't already realized it, Psalm 145 is very universalistic. There's no mention of temple, of Am Yisrael, of Israel, of Zion in the Psalm. And we'll talk about that as we read through it. Okay? So we know that from the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the Ashrei was being used in liturgy sometime in the 2nd century BCE. Okay, it was already being used in liturgy, in prayer.
What was?
The Psalm 145. Okay, they have prayers that they said, and so they had that. So it means it was being liturgized. What was going on elsewhere in the Jewish world, we don't know. Not from that point in time. At some point, it was included. What happened was when the Psalms began to be read at an early time, it may have been even before the destruction of the temple. We don't know for sure. Afterwards, it would appear that it happened when synagogues began to take hold. But there were already synagogues before the destruction of the temple. So in the Talmud, we read that the elders used to gather, the Hasidim HaRishonim, the early pious ones, would gather even before sunrise and read Psalms in order to sort of get a spiritual warm-up before they actually began the body of prayer, which began with the blessings of the Shema and the Amidah. All right, which were in some form, we don't know, but early on. Anyhow, so we know that was the case. And the Psalms that are read, the package is Psalm 145 through 150. That's what the tradition was. And so the Ashrei then was the beginning one. And so it is suggested that because it was the beginning one, it was the one that was most prone to get something, sort of an introductory lead into the psalm itself. Okay? And so at some point, that's what happened. Then centuries later, sometime, remember, when somebody asks, when did this happen? You say, in the Gaonic period, right? Just say that and you'll be fine. Somewhere in the Gaonic period, the Psalms, the what we would call Psuke de Zimra, the passages of prayer of song, those psalms, made their way into synagogue liturgy. Okay, and eventually more did. I mean, the Birkot HaShachar, the morning blessings that we say at the beginning of the service, were originally said at home, and eventually they did. So what happened was, over time, things that were meant either for individuals or for specific groups of people were melded into the order of prayer, sometime during the middle. All right, now, the question is, why were these particular verses chosen? Now, I mentioned to you earlier that these are very nationalistic psalms. But listen to the lines again. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha od yelalucha sela. Happy are those who dwell in your house; they will continue to praise you. Does that make any mention of Israel, Jew, anything like that? No. It just says those who sit in your house. All right. The question is that the temple or is that a synagogue? We don't know. But the fact is, it already is pointing to a group of people who would be sitting in a place like that. They're Jews. So it's an indirect allusion to Am Yisrael. Okay? So that would be the first piece. Now, the second piece is, B'chol yom avarchaka be'alalashim chale olam va'ed. All right, every day I will bless you, etc., etc. No, that's later. Wrong one. That's in the psalm itself. Roll it back. Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, ashrei ha'am she'adonai Elohav. Happy is the people for whom it is thus. Happy is the people whose God is Adonai. All right, the people. Does it say which people? No. All right. And then the last one. And we will praise you for now and forever. Who's the we? So clearly these are groups who spoke Hebrew, knew the Psalms, and knew to whom this was all referring, right? And they're Israelites, they're Jews. So my thinking is this universalistic psalm, I think, was viewed as perhaps being overly universalistic, in the sense that the psalm itself was not intended to be the beginning of any specific liturgized corpus of psalms. It was a psalm, and it was a universalistic psalm. But once you plug it into a prayer situation, you're taking it out of the, shall we say, milieu of the Bible and plunking it into a different milieu. And in that regard, the universalism seems a little bit too much. And I think what happened was they put these in, they didn't want to deviate too far from the universalism. Hence, they did not pick a line that said something about the people. Am Yisrael, Beit Yaakov, whatever, temple, Zion. They didn't do that. They could have, but they didn't, because this is a more subtle way of saying it. It's sort of like a code for the Jews who are saying this, for us, and only for us. So I that's my suggestion as to what it was, how that developed. But that's why. So today, most people don't realize, unless you have an annotated prayer book, that the first and last parts, the first two lines and the last line, are not part of the psalm. And we call it the Ashrei, because that's the first line. And by the way, Ashrei Ha'ish is the way the book of Psalms begins. Ashrei, with that word, happy, or fortunate. That's the first. Open up the book of Psalms, the first psalm, Ashrei Ha'ish, right? And so it was suggested that was used because maybe it echoes. This is like a mini book of Psalms once it became part of the liturgy. It's a mini book of Psalms for the liturgy. So they picked one that had that line. Okay. All right, Bert.
Doesn't Ashrei begin with an aleph?
Yes, and this one does.
It's the first letter of the Ten Commandments as well. I don't know if that means anything. But...
No, that's Anochi.
No, but it starts with an aleph.
Yeah. No,
it's the first letter of the alphabet. And
that's interesting. Okay, fine. But more, thank you, Bert.
Little obscure, but
I think the association with the whole word is a stronger argument, but that's okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay, Jackie.
Two quick things. One, my translation says blessed, so that goes to your fortunate. So it's interesting, happy and blessed, all that,
Yeah, well, blessed is really a little bit a stretch.
Well, that's what my book has.
I'm saying it's an very interpretive translation.
Oh, so you feel happy is better. That's good
happy
to know.
or fortunate. Yes.
That's very good to know. I get it. Okay, so let me put that down.
Yeah.
And my other question, because I'm a history major, I'm very into looking at the chronology. You said it was in a certain period. Can you spell the name of that Gonic period? How do you spell that? I've never heard that word.
What?
You said that this is in a certain period. Of what period?
Oh, no, this not written. It may have been that these additions to the psalm.
The overall psalm. When do you think this was started? When do you think?
Psalm? I don't know. I said maybe.
She was asking the Gaonic period, I think was what she was saying.
No, I said Gaonic. That's the Middle Ages. The Gaonic period.
Oh, all right, that's later. But you have no idea. Could you approximate? Like, is it the Second Temple? Anything? No idea.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to guess and say First Temple, but that's as far as I can.
There's nothing to attribute it or place it. I guess.
No hint that I can find. If you can find one, I will be happy. All right, Bible.
Yeah, that's good.
Bible.
I just wanted to say and point out that the Asher is the same root of one of the 12 sons who was also a tribe.
Yeah, I know, but and it may have something to do with it.
Right.
But
that double. But it was not meant necessarily to find meaning, but just find connection rather.
Oh,
but
different. I understand.
Just that that's the root, not the root, that it's the same root, and that might be a familiar. I mean, for other people who might not think about the name, or people might know that doubled male name Asher Zelig, which is the Hebrew Yiddish double.
Right. No, Asher is Asher, or it is the same root. And if you read on that particular one, I'm not sure. I don't think there's any attempt in the Torah to explain it. I do know, for example, that if you remember when Leah had her first 4 children, she explains the meaning of the names based upon how they relate to her feeling of being either beloved or not beloved by her husband. Each of the first 4, okay, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. And in each expression, her hurt is diminishing, and she feels maybe I'm getting closer to being to find favor in my husband's eyes. But that's, I think, only the first 4. But the other ones like Dan, from Ladun, right, to judge, and all of the names of the tribes have meaning. Yes. So yes, Asher probably is from the same root as, it's like good fortune.
In Hebrew, you want to wish somebody Osher ve'Osher.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that's right. One with an ayin and one with an aleph.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Raise your hand though, so I can. Yeah. Hello. Yes, Marion.
Okay. So I have a question though. So you're saying the psalm actually begins at verse 3?
No, it begins in the 3rd line.
The third line. So what verse is that?
It begins Tehillah LeDavid.
Psalm of praise of David, right?
That's it. Yeah.
I will exalt you, but I don't see all my stuff. All the words that I have in the Tehillim here, the art scroll, are bless, and I will bless you, and every day I will bless you, and
that's the psalm.
I understand. I thought you said something about the word would be more like happy is.
No, that's the first. What's the? You're looking in the Siddur.
No, I'm looking in the Tehillim. I have.
Oh, no, it's not in Tehillim. No. I said it's only that way in the prayer book.
Okay. Sorry, I was eating. I missed that. Okay, I got it.
That's Psalm, right? Yeah, those introductory things are taken from other Psalms.
From the other Psalms. Got it. Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry, thank you for clearing that up.
Okay. All right. Moving on. So now let's look at this Psalm. I mean, again, when I do this preparation for class, and I'm starting to look at the subtleties of the language and the structure and all this stuff, it's a real mind blower. We sing it like sort of nice little ditty, da 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 da. But this is a very profound, highly structured, and worked over linguistically psalm. And I will now demonstrate that to you. So, for example, Tehillah David, the first line of the psalm, Psalm 145, verse 1. Tehillah David avarimcha Elohai hamelech ba'abarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed. Okay? All right, so a song of praise of David. Tehillah, this is the only psalm in the entire Bible where the term Tehillah is used to define the nature of the poem, right? We've seen other words used, mizmor, right? Things like that. Tehillah, this is the only one. And it begins and ends the same way. All right, so let's review this line. All right. Tehillah David Aromim, and I'm including that because it is, you'll see from the last line, structurally, it's not just an introduction, but it actually sets a tone, a contextual tone that is part of the prayer. So a psalm of praise for David. So Aromimcha, right? I will extol you, I will elevate you. We're from Romim, Ram, I. Right, I will exalt you, Elohai HaMelech, right, my God the King, va'avarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed, and I will bless your name forever. All right, notice God's name isn't mentioned here. You have Elohai HaMelech, my God the King. So you say it's like Elohim, but the four-letter name of God, Yud Hey Vav Hey, is not there. But you've got to understand that the frame here, the beginning of structure, includes the second verse. So let's read line 2. B'chol yom avarchecha v'yahalalashim chali olam va'ed. All right? Again, Hashem's name is, no, not here. So in neither of these lines do you have Yud Hey Vav Hey. But it's clear when he says Elohai HaMelech, right, my Elohim. And what's interesting about that, by the way, in the first line, is he's making it clear that this is not just some abstract God. This is my God. But no name is mentioned here, okay? All right, we'll see that. We'll look later on what the other part of it says. So but there's no reference in either one. Right? There's a reference to God's name. But here is the thing. There are elements in both of these words that actually repeat, right? You can see it right away. All right, you have Tehillah David, all right? That verb, that root Tehillah, is found in line 2 with V'ahalaleha, Ahalalah. Okay, so you have Hey Lamed Lamed. Avarchecha in the second line, Va'avarcha, bless. Shimcha, your name, Le'olam Va'ed, forever. Okay, so there are elements that are, and they're both in the first person, right? He is speaking for himself and blessing God. So these elements represent part of what we would call the frame. Why do I say frame? Because now skip down to the last line. No, not the last line in the prayer book. The second to last line in the prayer book. And the last line, if you're using a Bible, okay? Tehilat Adonai Yadaber Pi. It begins Tehilat Adonai. You see it? All right. How does the psalm begin? Tehillah David. All right. So that's one element's the same. Okay. Tehilat Adonai Yadaber Pi. I will express. V'yavarech kol basar shem kadsho li'olam va'ed. And let all flesh bless God's name forever. Bless, barech. We had that at the beginning. We saw that in the first two lines, right? The reference to the name and forever, okay? And it's also this one, it's interesting because it's not only first person, but it's also talking about all flesh. In other words, so it is sort of encompassing the individual element here, which will pop up a number of times in the psalm, as well as the universal, right? Kol basar means what? All flesh, all creatures. So it is both very personal and universal at the same time. So, but you can see the elements that make up verses 1 and 2 and 21 are shared elements. That makes the frame. And the frame, of course, is one of abounding praise for God. And that ultimately is the major theme. All right, I put a title. I invented a title. All praise the beneficent universal God. That's my title for the psalm. All praise the beneficent universal God. Because as we will see, it talks about all the amazing things that God does and goes through various categories of divine activity. But as we will shortly see, somebody had their hand up, and I'll get to you in a second. Yeah, okay, cancel it out. All right, fine. All right, so we'll see now how this develops. However, the beginning, all right, so are you with me then? So we now have those first two lines that set the tone of for the psalm, echoed by the end frame, which repeat the elements and in a sense review those ideas. Okay, Tybal.
So with what you know about Psalms, if you were going to pick the absolute best verses to put in the all praise the munificent universal God, would they have been those three that the liturgist picked? I mean, obviously they're good ones, but are there better ones?
No, no, I wouldn't. But if I were trying to indicate subtly, my point is the added psalms, the added lines, right, that we find in the prayer book. I don't think they were chosen because they necessarily represent, an attribute of God. What they all say is that they're talking about closeness and relationship with God, yes. But that's not the only theme in the psalm. As I said before, I think they were selected because they accomplish the goal of the reader who is Jewish, understanding that they are included in this, but without boldly asserting that, so as not to so this is sort of to control the universal element that it is, not rather than to simply compromise or contradict. So I wouldn't look at those additional psalms. To me, they have no direct impact on my understanding of the meaning of the psalm. They were chosen for liturgical reasons, not for, I would say, any kind of anything that's within the psalm. That would be my opinion. All right. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Tehillah David, a psalm of David. Was he the author? Is it to him, of him? I know. So what does that mean, a psalm of David? Tell me.
Well, I mean, remember, there was the tradition that he wrote many of the psalms.
Yeah.
But we can't pinpoint which are his. I mean, remember, he lived between 1000 and 950, 960. the Hebrew that he would have been speaking would have been a little bit different from what we see here. As I said at the outset, the Hebrew here doesn't seem to be very, very, aged, or ancient. Ancient, yes, but not ancient. David is at the, still at that early stage.
So why is he mentioned there?
Because there was a need, there was a belief that David wrote, but we don't, these additions, these identifications were added in later. They're not really part of the psalm. Here it's put in very, very nicely, and it became part of it because it clearly, picks up at the end. And remember, again, it's an I didn't mention, this is an alphabetic acrostic, right? Each line begins according to the order of the Hebrew alphabet.
Except for the nun.
Except one is missing, which is the nun.
Do we know what line it was?
Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Very good.
Yes. Why did they take out the nun? I don't know.
Oh.
Some people say the number 21, which is what you end up with. The number 21 had some significant value, it was 3 times 7. Okay. And so that may have been part of it. The Dead Sea Scroll version has the missing nun.
And what is the line?
I forgot. I didn't.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me think. No, it is.
There's a whole line that began with nun, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't. Nobody assumes that it was the original because there are other psalms. There are 2 other psalms. We talked about this last semester. There are 2 other psalms that also have acrostics of 21 letters, with other letters missing. So it's clear that number 3 times 7 is significant. Does the psalm break down into 3 sections of 7 lines each? Not really, but we'll see as we go through it. Not really. Okay, so I think it must have been, for some reason, that was a number, but nobody knows for sure. Okay, Leon.
I think that it's important to notice that Tehillah LeDavid is some kind of title, because the Aleph is immediately after. So the actual beginning of the psalm is Aromimcha.
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, I say I'm right. That's what I agree with you. It clearly was added in.
And also, according to my translator, it's the only psalm that has this.
I said that at the outset.
Yeah, and you did say that, correct?
Yes, I did.
Does that mean that David wrote it, or maybe it was his psalm that he sang?
That's what I just asked.
Yeah, the Lamed. But since you're asking it that way, the Lamed can mean of David. In other words, he wrote it. It could mean in honor of David, right?
Right.
So it's not clear. My point though was and I don't know when it was put in. It could have been put in by the author himself originally, with the intention of making it part of the structure. And in order to do that, because remember what we just said, this is the only psalm where it's used. So it's an anomaly. In certain ways, that actually makes it more compelling to think that it was originally there, intending to be a psalm that is dedicated to David, okay, in his honor. Why? I don't know. There's no reference in here to a human king. In fact, you will see over and over again the power that is responsible for everything in this psalm is God. Okay? All right. Another point to make before we move on. The word kol, kaf lamed, meaning all in Hebrew, not AWL, but ALL, right? Kol, right? Kaf lamed, recurs 19 times in the psalm. And 10 of them, as we will see, in one cluster, the longest single cluster of lines toward the end. but 19 times. And my suggestion is, it is because it is the intent of the psalm, that this is the universal God, that everything that God does is kol, all. I'm thinking really in terms of universal power. So all of whatever it is incorporated in it, because we're talking about the God of all. And I think that multiple use is intentional in order to strengthen and to sort of help shape the theme of the psalm. All right, so keep that in mind now as we begin to read. Okay? All right. So now he said, we're going to praise God. All right? We're going to praise God. Okay, so let's do that. Psalm, verse 3. Okay, so now the psalm begins, Gadol Adonai u'mehulal ma'od b'ligdulato ein cheker. Great is God and greatly praised, and there is no comprehension, no understanding of God's greatness. Very interesting philosophical statement, right? Ein cheker. There's no understanding. Can't be fathomed. That sounds like good old Rembaum or good old Zohar, which of course were compiled centuries, millennia later, right? So I mean, but it's a here you have what became in Judaism a basic concept that ultimately God is God, we are we, and it is impossible for us to fully comprehend God. Okay, and that's a basic theological principle in Judaism. There it is. All right, so God is great, umahulal. Now, mahulal is connected to the first two psalms because you have that verb halal in line 1. The first two verses. You have that verb in the first line, tehillah David, and you have a halalah in the second line. So you have halal there, and here you have mahulal, which means praised. Okay, an adverbial form. All right? All right, so God is great. In fact, the greatness is mentioned twice. Gadol Adonai, ugdulato. Right? All right, now, but what we're going to see also, we're going to see a shift in letters, the use of letters. All right? Because I want you to pay attention as we read the next few lines. You're going to see that you see the Gimel Daled Gadol, Gedulato. You hear it, right? Gadol, Gimel Daled. Now remember the lines, the first usage is governed by the acrostic, right? The alphabetic acrostic. So it's got to begin with a Gimel. But there are many Gimels you can use. And here, though, it's Gadol, and then it's Ugedulato. Very appropriate. If you're going to start praising God, talk about God's greatness and this incomprehensible greatness. That's a very powerful statement, okay? So you have a Gimel and a Dalet, all right? So now let's see we're now going to move on and see the evidence of God's greatness. So now there are going to be other descriptive terms are now going to be introduced because, again, we're going through the process now of praising God and saying how praiseworthy God is. Okay, so just you should pay attention to listen to these are the attributes or the descriptive terms: greatness, might, splendorous glory, wonders and power of awesome deeds. And we're going to see two nuns there, the words that begin with nuns. Okay, then again, greatness. All right, so, but it's interesting. The concept of greatness begins this enumeration of God's qualities and powers and ends it. So there's almost a mini frame within this section. Greatness at the beginning, greatness at the end. Okay, all right, so now, verse 4, Dor lador yishabach ma'asecha ugvurotecha yagidu. So here's your Daled, right? From generation to generation, we will, your creatures will laud you. Or no, sorry. It's assumed I like the English translation here. One generation to another will praise your deeds. Okay, one generation to the other will praise your deeds. And guvurotecha yagidu, and declare your mighty acts. Gvura is strength. Okay, but look at the letters. Dor ledor, gvurotecha yagidu. You have a dalad and a dalad. Go back up to line 3. Gadol, gedulato. And now you come back to verse 4, gevuratecha. There's a gimel again. And in the last word, a gimel and a dalad again. You hear the sounds. You see there's a g and a d bouncing back and forth in these two lines. And partially, again, it's triggered by the first words, gadol and dor. But it's continued on. The choice of words continues that. That's poetry, right? Sounds, assonance. That's a typical poetic technique. But it also helps to remember it, right? If you have these, these gimels and dalads are clustered over here, but it's not finished yet. This is the interesting thing, okay? But something else has happened, all right? Just want to call your attention to it. Verses 1 and 2 are first person. The author is speaking himself to God. Verse 3 is a declaration. Now we're using third person in verse 4. Suddenly we switch to third person. So it jumps around from person to, different persons. Okay, so it's as if the author wants to make sure that all different perspectives are being covered here. Okay, think of the word kol again. Okay. The word kol came up for the first time. I don't want it to miss it in verse 2. B'chol yom, every day. All right, verse 2. So the first kol is there, the first reference to kol. Here we're sort of seeing what the kol includes. Different perspectives are being expressed. The group people express it. Undefined, unwashed masses express it. The individual author expresses it to him just by himself, or he will talk to God and express it. So verse 4, we have third person, right? In other words, they're talking about the generations who will praise God. Now, but look in verse 5. Hadar kavod hodecha v'divrei niflotecha sicha. Okay, the glorious majesty, I would rather say perhaps kavod is glory, the magnificent glory. Because kavod, when it's talking about God, that is a term that is used for the divine presence, the glory of God. There are numerous statements in the Torah, for example, that talk about the kavod. And it's like it's a kind of a bundle of divine energy that defines where God is. So the kavod, for example, appears when Moses finishes setting up the tabernacle. The kavod moves from the mountain into the Mishkan, into the tabernacle, and that's its home, meaning the divine presence comes in. So kavod is, in a sense, another term for God's presence. It's not just honor. It can mean honor, but when you're talking about God, you're talking about the divine presence. And I would suggest that's what this is saying, okay? And the hadar, hod, hadar, and hod, these words are descriptives of that beauty, magnificence, okay? And so you have hadar and hod. And by the way, those lines are often found, those words are found together often in numerous places in the Bible. Okay? All right. So he's talking about the kavod, and then this is v'divrei niflootecha asicha. And he's talking about himself. Now he's talking about himself. He's talking to God. And I will speak of your wondrous acts. I will. So he's again talking to God. He's part of the group. Generations praise God. I'm included in this. Me too. Okay. All right. So here's niflotecha. Next line. Ve'ezuz noratecha yomeru. Ugdulatcha asaprena. The power of your awesome deeds, no ra, right? No ra'ot are amazing deeds, awesome. They blow you away, okay? And it's from the Hebrew root Yud Resh Aleph, which means to fear. They can instill fear in you, but they instill awe. In other words, the power that is expressed is so intense that you sort of are afraid to get close to it. But it has done these amazing, amazing things. Again, so Yomeru, they will speak. Again, talking about the generations, the crowds. Now here it pops up again. Gdulatcha saprena. And I am going to talk about your greatness. So here you see he brings together the masses, the undefined they, and himself. But what he has done, first of all, you have in verse 5, niflotecha. Listen to the word. Niflotecha begins with a nun. It means your amazing acts. And then norotecha in verse 6 means your awesome deeds. They both begin with a nun. Okay? Now, the first line, so you have the hey with hadar. In verse 6, it begins with a vav. Now, the vav is just, in this case, doesn't have meaning other than and. It's an and, right? It's not a word that it doesn't associate with any specific meaningful word. It's just a connector, okay? But the word ezuz, that's the key word. It means power, oz, high power, and but it's great power. Ezuz, it's a word where that Zion is multiplied, okay? All right, but keep in mind that those are Zions. All right, but again, the Gedulah is mentioned, and as I said before, it harks back to verse 3, right? It parts with the announcement in verse 3, God is great, and here the greatness comes back. I say it's like a mini frame within it, okay? And indeed, we're going to see that the next bunch of lines moves in a different direction. It moves in a different direction. Let me just finish. I see, Bert, I see your hand. Let me just finish this whole point here. All right? The one thing I want to call your attention to. Remember before we saw that there was a bridge with the use of the word mahulal, halal, from the introductory 2 lines to line 3, which begins the process of talking about God's amazing qualities. So there's a bridge. Same thing here. The word ezuz has 2 Zions. The next line, which is verse 7, begins with a Zion. Okay? Zecher. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay? But you see, you see the pattern. He uses words to create bridges from one theme to the next. Okay? All right. Yeah, Bert.
I'm looking at Sefaria, and the word ugdulatcha is in brackets.
Yeah, because there are 2 versions of it. One is gevulatecha. Excuse me. Here, this is also from. I took this out of Sefaria. The ugdulatcha is in abbreviation. Is in parentheses, which means take it out and put in gedulatcha instead of gedulatecha. Because the problem is gedulatecha has an extra yud. Okay, it means your greatnesses. It's a plural. But there's only one gedula. Okay, so this is probably a krei and a ktiv, the way it was written and the way it's supposed to be pronounced. That's what that means. You got it? In other words, it was a questionable original word. Therefore, the Masoretes, the guys who did all the technical putting together of the Hebrew and the sentences and so on.
Changed the word?
They fixed it. Yeah, they dropped the yud out. They dropped the yud out in order to remove the hint at plural.
So it made sense.
It may be because you say gedulo techa, gedulot, your greatnesses, sounds like there's more than one God. Okay, so you don't want to have that. And okay, now in ancient, the point is though, sometimes those yuds, the yuds and the vavs and the aleph, they just bounce around and they don't necessarily mean things. They may be for emphasis or something like that. But it would change the meaning of the word from a plural to a singular. We're talking one God, one greatness. That's probably.
Was the tune written, excuse me, in the Middle Ages, would you guess? The tune that we sing now, if you had to guess, or later, like 1700s.
When would that have been done?
Yeah, the tune. How old is the tune that we use? Any idea? Yeah, the melody that we use, that we sing.
I don't know, 15, 20 years old, 30 years old. I don't know.
It's that new? No, I
There's
mean,
a whole bunch of melodies for it. Other shuls sing it a different way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I mean, that you got to ask a cantor. I don't know that. It's not, that melody is not, I don't think any music that we use is from biblical times.
Right. No, that I know. I wonder how far.
I have no idea.
People, the melodies we use all the time, most people think they came from Sinai.
I know the me Sinai, because they have that, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't mean Temple Sinai.
They may have been written in the 16th century,
You don't say Temple Sinai.
Yeah, well, we try. Thank you, Rabbi. I have to leave at 8:30, but thanks so much, okay?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks, Tayapol. Be well. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. No, it's not Tybal. Oh, no, it's Jackie left. That's right. Sorry. Tybal's still. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, all right, so we're going to move. We're going to transition now. This is really interesting, and this is intentional. Here, the theme here was power, right? Qualities that God have that relate to actions of power. Awesome, mighty, wondrous, majesty, right? Mighty acts. Yes? Agreed? Greatness. Okay. A shift. Zecharab tubchaya biu b'tzidchatcha yeranenu. Okay. They shall, well, yeah, biu means to express. They will express the recalling of your great goodness. Tubcha, tov. Everybody knows the meaning of tov, right? So they will recall the greatness. This is the masses now. And they will sing joyously of your tzedek, your beneficent, your justice. But here it's tuv, so it could probably mean, like something more active than just being a righteousness. So it could be beneficence, like in tzedakah, right? In charity, right? But here we go on. Again, now this isn't power. Chanun v'rachom Adonai, erech apayim ugdal chesed. Right? God is compassionate and loving and patient and filled with loving kindness. Right? Where's that from?
The 13 attributes of God.
13 attributes of God, exactly. Exodus chapter 34, verse 6.
I couldn't speak for a second, but it's also remember I said before we started, the greatest parsha, if you're born and get to do Chol HaMoed, Sukkot, or Pesach, it's in there.
Yes. But it pops up a number of times. Yes, it does. But this is the primary source. I went back to the original. Right? Adonai El Rachum v'Chanun Erech Apayim Rat Chesed V'Emet. So this is a takeoff on that. Again, this is not divine power. This is kindness. It's softness. It's for compassion. Next line. Okay? Next line. Verse 9. Tov Adonai lakol v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. God is good to all, and his compassion is over all of the things that he has done, his works. Again, goodness, compassion, universal. Okay, there is a coal, folks, and this one, it's two coals, right? Tovanai la kol, rachamav al kol masav. Again, you can see it's expansive. Who benefits from God's goodness? All creatures, right? And which of God's actions are filled with compassion? All of his actions are filled with compassion. And this now you see, so when Rashi, for example, says that God created the world by bringing together judgment and compassion, but what came first? What was the most powerful of the two? Compassion. It says Adonai Elohim. Adonai is God of compassion. Elohim is God of judgment. Compassion comes first. Okay, and this notion then that, those of you who are taking the book of love with me, right? This is something we see all the time, that this concept of divine compassion flows everywhere. So but here you can see it. And then finally, I saw somebody had a hand up, and I'll get to you in a minute. Okay, so his compassion is over everything. Yoduch Adonai kol maasecha, all of your creatures, all of your works. And this is probably the animate ones. All of your works will praise you. V'chasidecha yevarchucha, and your faithful one shall bless you. Your faithful one shall bless you. Who are God's faithful ones? Does it say the Israelites are his faithful ones? Could be, but not necessarily. I think the assumption here is that amongst the masses, and we're going to see this going to come up later, they're the ones who are faithful to this God. They may not be from Israel, but they are nonetheless faithful. Okay? All right. That's the end of that segment. Okay? Again, two uses of kol. Yoduchanai kol maasecha. All your works shall praise you. V'chasidecha. This is only one time. But you see here, three coals right there. Okay? All right. Who had a hand up?
I did. Just this also stresses, I think it's very, very universal, but also the idea that God made everything.
Yeah, of course.
And that's kind of why God is doing this.
Yes, exactly. But
these are God's works, not our works.
That's universal.
Right.
The universal creator. Exactly. So amazing. But you see, that's how this is put together. So that was 3 lines. And now we're going to have another expression. But this time it goes back to power. You see? Now look what it said. This is God. This time he speaks of glorious, mighty, eternal kingship. And if you don't believe me, you're going to get hit over the head now with kingship. Are you ready? If you don't like the royals, suck it up. Here we go. Kavod malchut chayomeru ugvurat chayadaberu. They, again, they, all of your creatures, presumably the ones who can express it. But I have no idea if he's talking about animals too. My guess is he's primarily talking about human beings. Kavod malchut, they will, the glory of your kingship will they say, of this glory they will speak, and of your power, guruatecha, and they will speak of your power, of your might. So here we're back to Gevurah again, right? We saw that earlier, but now it's in the context of kingship. Okay, next line. Lahodia livnei ha'adam gevurotav. This is interesting. To make known among people your mighty acts. So who is it that's going to make known? Well, perhaps these are the faithful ones mentioned up above. In other words, within humankind, there are those who have a strong affinity with this God. And in order to make sure that everyone grabs this, they will make known to humanity, to humankind, your power and the glory and the amazing, wondrous glory of your kingship. Okay, again, Malchut, right? So you have Malchut once in line 11, again Malchut in line 12. All right. Now, I just want to show you, I love chiasms, right? So there's a little mini chiasm here. All right. You have kavod and gevurah in line 11, and you have gevurah and then kavod in line 12. See it? So ABBA, a mini chiasm. All right. And again, why do poets put chiasms in? Emphasis, right? Pay attention. This is an important principle I'm setting forth. And that's what you have here. Is that clear? Yeah. All right. You guys should be able to figure that out yourself these days. What I'm hoping you will do is when you finish this class and you start reading these things, you're going to go crazy like I do and say, oh my God, look at this. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Is that right? Be careful. You don't want to go crazy. Okay. Don't do it. Don't become like me. All right. And finally, here it really piles on. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim. Your kingship is a kingship forever. It is eternal. Mem shaltecha b'chol dor v'ador. Your rule, your dominion is forever, for all generations. Okay? Kol, twice. Kol olamim, foreverness. Kol dor v'ador is eternity. Okay? Kol. All right? Okay. So now we dealt with kingship. But now we're going to shift back Tybal, before we shift back. Go ahead, Tybal.
I have different kind of questions. The way you just said that, I assume it changes based on the type of the year and the holiday, but preparing these two times when you've been teaching Tehillim, did that book move up on your list of biblical favorite books?
Oh, you mean because of what
like if you have a mental list, like for me, I'll say because of my name, obviously it's always going to be the book of Jonah has to be first for me, though other books may move around based, as I say, time of year and holiday. But did you not just understand, but did you come to love the Psalms more by preparing these?
Yes. No, look, I've always enjoyed everything in the Bible. There's not one, and there's nothing I've studied in the Bible that has not, I wouldn't say impressed. I mean, I did not enjoy reading the book of Job. Anybody who enjoys reading that book has got to be a sadist. I mean, the poor guy. I didn't enjoy reading the book of Ecclesiastes because, I mean, it's also very negative. All right. I loved reading Song of Songs because it's gorgeous. I mean, I can tell you go on and on. The different prophets, I have different reactions to different prophets. But, but yes, I would say the value of the stock of Psalms in my Dow Jones went up. I mean, I always knew they were great, but you can see that in my emotion. I mean, this is amazing stuff. These guys were true artists, poets, but also with messages, powerful, profound. And they knew how to structure things to get across, right? Again, where we're going to head now is into, again, the more personal side of what God is, okay, in these next sets of verses. And it's this part now where you're going to see lots of coals, okay? All right. So here we go. So these verses 14 through 18 express the fact that Hashem is, and his name will be popping up now, is the universal God who cares for all. This is a caring God, right? Remember, we saw a compassionate God who does good. We've seen two expressions of mighty, and now this is the second expression of the soft side of God, okay? All right, moving along. The nun is missing because you see we move from men to samach. Malchutcha goes now to somech, all right? Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakfufim. God picks up those who have fallen, and he straightens up those who are bent. Okay? And you can interpret this in a variety of different ways. Is this bent physically? Is it bent spiritually? Okay? As a modern, you might want to say, no, this is somebody who is depressed, right? And where do we find the term somech noflim? Where? Right, exactly. In the Amidah. Somech noflim berofei cholim umatir asurim. Okay, so there's
and also in the morning blessings.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, this is not but this is one of the places. I didn't look up in the concordance to see how many times this verb is found. Maybe I'll see if I remember, I'll check it. Yeah, go ahead.
It is, as you were saying, this is really a huge change from the magnificence of kingship forever, and now we're talking about helping somebody who's bent over to stand up. And
exactly.
It's two different poles of God.
Exactly. This is the caring God. Right. Exactly.
Rabbi God.
Very private, very personal.
Very personal.
So you move from the transcendent God, if you will, the great power, to the God this is the God of chapter 2 of Genesis, right? Who cares for this little creature that he created. And of course, who in chapter 3 spits in his eye. And that's why God gets so angry. But he cared for him. And he continued to care because, remember, he made sure that they got dressed properly before he kicked them out of the garden. Right? So even in his punishing of them, he cared for them. All right, so this is the caring God, right? But notice the sound, folks. Sounds, somech, zokef. O-A, and the Zion and the Samach are a little similar. Somech, noflim, rofei cholim. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. All right, somech, noflim, but then again, noflim and kfufim, right? Noflim with a pei, a fei, kfufim with two feis. You hear it? So somech, zokev, noflim, kfufim, word plays, sound rather, right? Using sound as a means of conveying meaning, poetry. Okay. All right. Next. Einei kol elecha yisaberu, ve'ata noten lahem et ochlam be'ito. All right. Here is a call again, right? The eyes of all look to you hopefully. Why? They're hungry. And you indeed give them their food in proper time. Okay? Now, keep in mind this term yisaberu, right? So it means really to hopefully cry out. Yisaberu. Sa-beru. Yisaberu. The sa and the bet. The sin and the bet. Yisaberu. Okay, so that's verse 15. Now, verse 16. Poteach et yadecha umasbia lechol chai ratzon. It continues the same theme. You open your hand and you satisfy all living creatures, satisfy the need or the desire of all creatures. Okay? Now, look at the word masbia, which means to satisfy. Sin bet, yisaberu. Sin bet, sounds similar. This is so they cry out and you satisfy. So in a sense, it connects the two verses into one ongoing theme. God provides food for those who cry out for it, and they are satisfied. He takes care of us. Okay? All right, Bert and then Tybal.
Question. It's always puzzled me why this verse was so incredibly important to the rabbis. And in fact, you touched the tefillin in your arm and your head traditionally when reciting this verse.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of wonderful verses here. This one pop out.
I will read to you the note that I wrote because I anticipated your question. All right. So Chazal consider this, our sages consider this line to be so important. It says, whoever says this psalm 3 times a day is guaranteed a place in the world to come. Okay. This is the line. In fact, there's a tradition that when you say it, you go like this. I think it's a Sephardic tradition. You literally open your hands, indicating that I understand that's something we have to do also. Okay? Yes, it's an expression. Again, it's the ultimate expression of the universalism of God. All creatures, kol chai. And here it would clearly apply not just to human beings. All creatures he takes care of. Okay? Now that's important, if you are a reader of this and you are a shepherd, right, or you have cows and goats and whatever, right, you want them to be taken care of too. So God takes care of everybody. The caring God. All right. Why this line? It's hard to know for sure. It's an easy line to remember, but also I wonder sometimes if Chazal choose to emphasize a certain line, and here I would say maybe to respond to some element in the culture. I see your hand, Leon, just a second. To respond to some problem, some issue. And one of the reasons why this line and this psalm are said 3 times a day, because it's a reminder to all that Jews are not simply narrow-minded nationalists, but that we are universalists, and our God is a universal God. And, because the Jews, from the time of the Greeks down till today, have been looked upon as a weird group of people who have strange customs and tend to isolate themselves from everybody else. Now, up until the modern period, that was actually physically correct, right? And even to this day, we tend to gather in groups of people, and where we're comfortable. But it was even more prominent prior to modern times. Jews sought that out for millennia. As long as they were in the diaspora, they wanted to make sure that they had the right to have a semi-autonomous existence. And they chose to live in a way that separated themselves from others. The many Greeks and Romans couldn't get this because they were universalists. They had empires that, covered the world. So they knew from all kinds of different people. And the only people you hear them yelling and screaming about are the Jews. Some of the proto-anti-Semites called us misogynists. We hated human beings. That's why we're separate. Okay. In the Middle Ages, this whole thing was transferred over to the blood libels. Not only do we hate others, we actually eat them. We're quasi-cannibals. Right? Okay. And what this is saying then is, folks, remember to tell your neighbors, or the ones you're not neighborly with, the people the Gentiles out there, we care for them too. We don't hate people. That's not who we are. And 3 times a day, we remind ourselves that our God cares for everybody. Okay, so I'm just wondering if that was a reason. I can't prove it. But the fact is, this is the only psalm that appears 3 times in the prayers.
Are you saying the key words here are l'chol chai then?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And in a sense, it's a continuation of verse 15, right? It's a continuation of the same theme. But this is a little bit broader because he satisfy all the needs, not just food, right? So it's a broader one. That's why they probably emphasize this line. Okay. All right. So this is the key line, and you'll be in shul. You'll hear people who would be davening, and they'll just go through this as a prayer. We don't sing the whole thing. We daven it, right? But then you'll hear somebody will just say it out loud because this is the line that we know is the critical line. And it's a way of reminding ourselves too. Maybe that's also it. Don't hate the outer world just for the sake of hating. As our book says, love them. God does. Okay. All right, Leon.
I don't remember where I found it, but in some prayer books, there is a relationship to he feeds ha'orev. He feeds the birds that go after carcasses at the appropriate time as well. And I can't remember exactly where. I've been looking through all this nusachim and I can't find it right now. Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
No, that what? So even the birds, the carcasses for
even the birds
that God satisfies their needs.
Correct.
I'm not. That's very interesting. But it is. You think about it. It's very contemporary, because what we all know that those birds perform a service. They get the stinking meat out of the way.
Yeah, but it's stuck in my mind because when I see the comparison, I was reading the Hebrew, and it says, "Poteach et yadecha u'masbia lekol chai ratzon," and then it says, "Venoten lechem." It's possible that it's called "noten lechem lekol basar."
It could be. Lechem means food. It
doesn't
just mean bread. Yeah.
But I thought it was "masbia." I'll find it.
Maybe. Yeah. Let us know. That's very. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, but it's the same. Here, I see your hand, Tybal. People think that seagulls catch fish. They don't catch fish. They eat carrion that's floating on the water. They are garbage picker-uppers. So when you throw bread, that's their stuff. I can prove it because we went, Marshall Temkin and Susie, his beloved wife of blessed memory, they have a sailboat. And we sailed out to Catalina. And it was great. Over a weekend, we spent Shabbos in Catalina. And we ate on the boat. We made Shabbos and davened on the boat, And then we went for a walk during the day. It was lovely. Anyhow, so we were tied up on a pylon in a little harbor area, by a walkway that you could walk on. Came a little pier that came out, and they brought a lot of. Susie used to bring on these trips old bread to feed to the fish, and so she would start dumping it in the water. And this is no joke: 30 fish, all different sizes and shapes, suddenly emerged at the surface of the water to eat the bread. It was challah. They love Shabbos challah. Okay, we were sitting there. This is amazing. It must be Jewish fish, and they're not gefilte either. So it was unbelievable. Sitting over there on a post was a seagull, and occasionally he would fly over to get what? The fish. You'd think there are fish his size. He could grab it and take it and eat it. Immediately, boom, it's right there. No, he wanted the bread too. Okay. So, they eat garbage. So, obviously we're talking about dead fish that float on the water, things like that. But they're not hunters. The pelicans, they're hunters. They got that big mouth. They just open it up and they scoop over the water and get a bunch of fish. So, obviously they can't take in too big a fish, but, however they manage. All right. Anyway, so yes. Yeah. Okay. Tybal.
2 questions. One is, I know it's a different word, Mizbeach, altar, and Mizbeach. I know it's Zion versus Sin, Hey versus Ayin, But would someone who knows Hebrew think of altar because it sounds alike?
No.
Or no? It's not close enough.
Mizbeach is Zion Bet Chet.
Oh, I thought it was Zion. Never mind. I knew it was different, but to me they
Mizbeach.
sounded like.
No, it's a Chet at the end. Yeah.
No, they sounded alike to me. No.
Yeah, well, but not really. I understand. Yeah, but a different word. The Hebrew root here is Sin Bet Ayin, and Mizbeach is Zion Bet Chet.
Got it. Okay. And the other is, I'm sorry, I lost track. And to me, it could be 14, 15, or 16. That's the key line. Which did you think which were you saying was
16,
the key
line? You open your hand and satisfy the needs of all living creatures. Okay? All right.
Now, the translation for that line isn't nearly as good in our prayer book as it is in Sepharia, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, look, yeah. The prayer book, sometimes, as I said, that particular prayer book, which one are you looking at? The new one? I can't hear you. You muted yourself.
The big Sim Shalom, not the slim Shalom.
Oh, the original one. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the problem, I think, with both versions of the Sim Shalom series was that they tried to overly interpret the Hebrew to put it into more contemporary terms, capture the essence. But then if you look in the Lev Shalem, it's going back more to the literal meaning. And because you have the notes on the side of the page that can help you understand some of the more complex, okay? And that's better. I'm in favor of letting people look at the original and then think about what the meanings could be. Let them make their own midrash. That's fine, rather than brushing it over. Because if they do that, then also it just compounds the felony of not being able to consider the stream of thought of the author of the prayer or the psalm. Because if you have the words that have the same meaning and using the language of the author, then you can see how that mind is working. That's what we see here, right? When these terms go back and forth, you see the mind of the author spelling out basic principles. But it continues. Here, go ahead. And now, verse 17. Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav v'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Okay, so God is, I would say, loyally beneficent, because tzedek can mean loyal. It can mean the proper. It can also mean beneficent, right? And so here it's interesting because the Curler Baumgartner uses the term. This line says it means loyally. All right, so God is loyally beneficent in all God's ways, and chassid, faithful, right? Loyal, again. A chassid is someone who is attached to somebody else. Here, God is the chassid. God in all his works, he's loyal, okay? Usually a chassid is somebody who clings to God. This is a case where God is being a chassid in clinging to his creatures. And chesed has that meaning. I've said before in many biblical settings, chesed is used for covenantal compliance. God is a God of chesed because he complies with the covenant that he made. Okay, so this loyalty is a principle that's there as well. And if that's the case, then you can see that tzaddik and the chassid in this case, it's repetitious, but again, it's using different words to make the same point. He's loyal, okay, building on what we saw before. And then the next line, this is again, poetry is now going to pop up at us. Listen closely. Karov l'chol Adonai, l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikra'uhu ve'emet. Karov korav yikra'uhu. Karov korav yikra'uhu. You got it? All right?
This is an incredibly personal and revolutionary line as well.
Yes.
You want to talk, because it goes way beyond, I mean, it's isn't it in Deuteronomy we say the words are as close as your lips?
Yeah, what say again?
I mean, but it's like God. You can touch God.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly right. And this is immanence. Yes, this is an immanent God. He's right here. He's right here. So again, you bounce back from global, right? Universal power. But at the same time, he responds again. Karov Adonai Chol. Here's Kol. By the way, you had a bunch of Kols here. Sadik Adonai B'chol Drachav, Hasid B'chol Masav. Everything he does, Kol, Karov Adonai L'chol Korav. God is close to all those who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. Okay, so this is specifically here. It says in the end, people who call upon him, and they add the word be'emet, that they are as committed to him as he is to them. Truth, this is not a philosophical truth here. This is again a term of like emet ve'emunah.
I'd rather see it translated in truth than with this word sincerity.
Yeah, right. Of course, sure. But here, in the translation here, it's faithful.
This is also
no. Sorry.
It says sincerity and
says sincerity. Yeah, that's a better word.
I like in truth better.
Well, but the truth is, yeah. But I think
with truth.
But emet can mean this sincerity. Here it means the same thing as eman, emet ve'emunah, right? Emet has this notion of it's not a philosophical truth. It's true to you who you are. Okay, in that sense. So sincerity here has a it's close to it.
Doesn't this undercut a bit the universalism? Because God takes care of those who are close to him. Now, not everybody in the world is close to God. I would say, there are people who are not close to God.
Right.
So doesn't that undercut the universalism?
Yeah, in a sense it does, but I think it may also, because the first line says Kol Korav. All right, then the second, right. You're right. Yes.
Not everybody, only the ones that are.
I understand your point.
Right.
You are correct. I think what we're going to see now, though, especially this is a segueing into verses 19 and 20.
Okay.
Because verses 19 and 20 are going to pick up exactly what you're talking about. That it's almost a saying, God has a relationship with everybody. You can't deny that. That's what the thing has been up until now, right? No question. That has been established. But now it's shifting to those within the everybody. Remember above we said there are those who are supposed to go out and tell humanity about God's greatness. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that we're now talking about. We're shifting into them. And the last two lines are going to be that group. And you'll see it very clearly. So a good point. No, seriously, Gabrielle, it's a very good point. It's a shift, and it's an intentional one. Because it's not saying that it understands that there are different grades, shall we say, of God-fearers, right? There are those who accept the principle and, have that impact their lives in one way or another. But there are others who take it really seriously. And it's as if God is saying, and he takes special account of these people because he is himself, he reciprocates. And it doesn't say exactly what he does for them, but he's aware of them. And in a sense, they're a little closer to God. And that, by definition, that makes him closer to them. And it's a legitimate statement for a universal God, right? Not everybody believes. People can have a serious faith in God, but their expression of that and their commitment may not be as great as others. And it's recognizing that. So it brings an element of reality into the psalm And we're going to see at the very end, it really hits you over the head with reality that seems to contradict a lot of the stuff that we've been saying also. So hold on to your hats. All right. So we're heading toward the conclusion. All right, Bert, and then Tybalt.
Just quickly, this may be a stretch, but I've always looked at this as a plea for kavanah, as opposed to empty
I have that.
worship.
I wrote that down. Yeah, true kavanah.
Right. I mean that the way you get to God is in the heart and not necessarily in the external thing, whatever.
Well, yeah, but I he doesn't deny he doesn't demand a lot, right? I mean, he's not
the heart. He demands the heart.
Here.
Yeah.
Right. But prior to this point, you didn't hear many demands, right? The only thing you heard before was the good.
I'm not even sure this is a demand as much as this is just a statement.
No. Look, it's not a demand. You're right. But I use that term loosely. Okay. But the point is, it's a recognition. This is the ideal, right? That really, it's funny because I wrote down with true kavanah, praying with true kavanah, right? I mean, you've got people who go to shul and observe. They're observant Jews. There's no question about it. And they fear God. They respect God. But at the same time, there's a mechanical element to how they do that, right? And there's not a lot of thought and feeling. They do it. In fact, there's some who do it because they believe that it's in the doing that makes God happy. And the whole concept of kavanah for them is secondary. And there is, in fact, a debate amongst thinkers throughout rabbinic times as to whether you really need kavanah to accomplish a mitzvah. You can do it without having a lot of kavanah, and you get credit for that, just as much as the guy who did it with kavanah.
But it does take a bit of chutzpah for me to believe that the creator of the universe cares about whether I have the exact form or not.
Well, that's something else. Okay. No, I know. Yeah. But the point is, you got to look at it from their perspective, right? You're not living in the 9th century BCE. Maybe you want to go back. I don't know that I want to. No. Okay. All right. Now let's finish up. Okay. So building up what Gabriela told us.
Rabbi?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Tybalt.
The yirah word, why is it fear and not awe? Well, why is it the fear meaning and not the awe meaning?
The what meaning?
AWE, the awe meaning. My translation is, he will fulfill the desire of them that fear him. Why isn't it the ones that have awe for him? Because can't yirah be either fear or awe?
You're jumping ahead. No, you're doing verse 19. I'm not there yet. Hold on.
Oh, I thought you were.
I haven't read it yet.
I don't know why, because you were talking about fear. I thought we went on, but.
No. All right. Here we go. 19 and 20. So now we're going to look at these. Now, what's interesting here is, though, you have here the fear-love dyad. All right? But they're all, let's see what it says. God hears the wishes, the needs of those who fear him, and they hear his crying out, and he delivers them from whatever it is that causes them to cry out. Okay? A special statement for them. Okay? He hears them for who they are. These are the God-fearers. Do they need to be Israelites? Not necessarily. But they are the ones we were just talking about, who have a closer relationship with God. These are the ones who probably actually reach out to God more. I mean, you can be a person who benefits from God and you can thank God, but you may not be the ones who reach out to God. Help me here, God. I need some wisdom, right? Instead of trying to figure it out yourself, you say, I tried, God, help me. I need this. I have faith in you, and I will, do what you say. Give me a hint, whatever. Okay, all right. So that's what it is. But here now look at the sounds again. Shabbatam Yishma v'Yoshiem. You see that? You have Shin Vav Ayin, Shin Mem Ayin, Yud Vav Shin Ayin. Same letters, all in different permutations. Shabbatam means their cries. Yishma, hear. Yoshiem means will redeem or deliver them. Poetry, assonance, same thing. But it continues in the last line. So those are the God-fearers. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav. Another kol here. God hears all of those who love him. So people who fear him and people who love him. Which is the most important way to God? Fear of God or love of God? Well, the tradition says a little bit of both or a lot of both. Not fear that you quake, but fear that you really, often fear is translated as awe, you know. But yeah, I like Bert's face. It's not that. There is an element of fear. You know, it says, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, right? Yeah, but then it also says, Ish aviv ve'imo yira'u.
Have awe of them.
Fear.
Yes.
Yes.
But then Franklin Roosevelt said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which
well,
and our parents always told us, don't be afraid.
Yeah. No, but the point is, you have Yirat Shamayim, and then you have Ahavat Adonai.
Right.
Fear of heaven and love of Adonai. And, you know, there's a mixture of both.
I think Nachman of Bratslav said the bridge is very narrow.
Yes.
Don't be afraid. It's the most important thing. So
right, yeah.
It's kind of
of course.
I prefer awe.
That's a different fear, I think. That's
right. Okay.
It's fear what's going to happen to you. Okay. All right. Anyhow. But look, here's the kicker. So there's another sheen sound. You hear it? Mm-hmm. Look at the last few words. Vet kol harishaim yashmid. He will destroy all the evil people. Where did this come from? This is totally out of context. Where did it come from?
The Bible.
No, it's in the Bible. But point is, why?
It looks like an editor.
At the very end, does that pop in? I have a thought. Do you? See, you can't take anything for granted here. You got to ask, why is that here?
He wants to warn. It's a warning. It's a warning. If you're wicked, you're going to be destroyed. And
yes, it is. But he doesn't. We didn't deal with evil anywhere here. It wasn't on the agenda at all. Now suddenly it's on the agenda. You're right. It's a warning, and that's why it's there. Absolutely. But why? I mean, couldn't you have said the whole thing and talk about God, who is loving and caring, et cetera, et cetera?
No, because he's already in Torah punished the wicked in the past.
Well, I understand.
Threatened to punish them and been talked out of it.
Yeah,
so he's telling him, I'm still there and I'll still destroy the wicked.
Barbara, you're right, but I'm saying this particular psalm, up until now, we have had no hint that evil was a factor.
Right. But they say if you be kind to the cruel, you'll be cruel to the kind. So it's very important for God to be.
Wait, but hold on just a second, Gabrielle. Sure. Marion had her hand up.
Well, I'm going out on a limb here, but it feels like as we get closer to God, we get closer and closer and closer. There's this sort of a thing that happens where we could flip at in any second. We could move away from that, and if we move away from the love, then that is being wicked. I mean, I don't know about that word in terms of the translation, but that, in other words, as we move closer and closer to God. It's like you can't see God's face. So we're moving closer and closer and closer to God. There's this tendency to want to flip. And God is saying, I will see you if you flip, and just keep going, getting closer, keep coming closer.
Maybe I might put a different spin on that.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thought, very provocative, yes. But I wonder if it also means that if you feel you're just buddy-buddy with God, maybe you can get away with something. And it's a reminder you can't. I don't know. Or the other...
I like to take it as the personal, meaning I am headed in that direction, and, there's this thing we can't see God's face, and so the closer we get, the more we may be likely to flip, and God is saying, just keep going.
I see. I understood. I see. In other words, maybe it's like you're getting too close to the nuclear reactor.
Right. And it gets scary. It gets scary. It gets awesome. And don't let that stop you. Just keep going.
Maybe that's it. If you become overwhelmed with the power and say, this is too much for me. Goodbye. That could be. Yeah. But I also think the point that Gabrielle mentioned was that you've got to deal with reality. And the author doesn't want you to think that God ignores the evil in the world, because that is a compromise of what you'd expect from God. And the point is, it had to be, but I think he sneaks it in over here because he wants to already create the framework of the power of God, as well as, and that's why you see that, right? We saw two different lines of thinking. One was the power of God, and one was the compassion and care of God, right? And the power was awesome, and the care was loving. The power generated the fear, and the love came out of the caring, yes? And so the point would be then, don't forget the power. Don't assume God is a pushover. He loves you. He cares for you. He will have compassion, means he will be forgiving. Remember, compassion includes forgiveness. So if you say, I can do this, God will forgive me. Right? It's the mafioso, right? Who kills and goes and makes confession. He'll forgive me. And that's what it's saying. No. You can't get away with it. Don't forget the fear of God. Don't forget the fear of God. You're playing with fire here. The fire can keep you warm when it's cold, or it can burn you up if it gets too hot. And if you put too much wood on the fire, it's going to burn you up. So I think we're sort of all in the same category here. And it's a dose of reality in the end. The world, there's evil in the world. We didn't talk about the evil in the world. It's there, but the evil are going to get it. That's the point it's making. Okay. And then finally, it's a whole repetition of what we saw at the beginning, right? The praise of God, my mouth will speak, and all flesh will praise God forever. I'm going to do it. Everybody's going to do it. And here, again, Adonai is mentioned here in the frame. It wasn't before, but here it is. And the shame is there as before. Leolam Va'ed is there. Bracha is there. Tehillah is there. So it's a final conclusion to the psalm. An amazing psalm. This is not the little ditty that we sing in shul. Right? It's it's a well-designed, thoughtful, artful, impactful. It can make you cry. It can make you proud. It's an amazing psalm.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.